Today on Dr. Phil, a never-before-aired interview I did with Jeffrey Dahmer's father. If your kid is going around collecting dead animals, cutting them open and exploring them, how do you not know that?
I guess I was a little bit naive.
It was said that he had even impaled a dog's head.
He told me that he decapitated and put on a stake.
Tell me about the locked wooden box.
If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it.
But we now know the box contained a human head.
Psychopaths are born. Sociopaths are made. People that become serial killers start learning how to lie and manipulate when they are very young. They're always looking. They're always hunting.
There are Jeffrey Dahmers walking among us right now. Yesterday, we spoke to two men who say they may have been some of Jeffrey Dahmer's very first victims. They say the Netflix series Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, made them physically ill, and that what people watched as pure entertainment was a hell they did not want to relive. The surviving victims of Jeffrey Dahmer and the family members of those he killed want the world to know what the man they say was an evil monster was really like, not the Hollywood version. Today, we'll go inside the mind of a serial killer and hear the truth about who he really was from his very own father and stepmother, speaking out in a never-before-aired interview. Here's what happened yesterday.
The #1 show on Netflix this weekend was the mini-series on murderer Jeffrey Dahmer. The film reopened some old wounds for some of Dahmer's victims.
I want to welcome two men who say they were victims of Jeffrey Dahmer. The difference is they survived.
I was in Germany from 1977 to 1980, and my sergeant asked me to train a new gentleman, which was Jeffrey Dahmer. And I was to train him to be a medic, and during that time, I was drugged and raped by Jeffrey.
He raped me, drugged me.
And he also beat you.
Yes, he beat me so hard that I, of course, yelled. If I yelled, he would hit me harder to stop the yelling. I cannot, for the sake of me, understand why anyone would want to glamorize that guy. At all.
Actor Evan Peters plays the infamous cannibal killer. Now the new Netflix series is bringing memories of Dahmer's vile deeds flooding back.
I think it was insensitive for the way it was done.
What was your reaction?
I threw up.
Dahmer was 33 when he told Nancy Glass about his twisted motive for killing 17 men.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
What's your reaction to hearing him speak, knowing that he had his hands on you?
I really suffered survivor's guilt.
He's lying in that interview. He was a practiced liar, practiced manipulator.
Rita Isbell is the sister of one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims. She was overcome with emotion as she says face to face with evil at Jeffrey Dahmer's sentencing.
Listening to the two gentlemen, it just blew my mind. That lets me know that I was right the whole time when I was in front of him, Dr. Phil.
You felt the presence of evil when you were with him.
I felt it. I felt it. I had no idea.
What did you feel a presence when you looked him in the eye?
I was face to face with Satan himself. That's how I felt. I feel so bad for the two gentlemen. I really feel bad for you. I'm crying for them.
I think it's so important that you have the voice and you're able to put this in perspective so people don't buy this fiction, this fantasy about who Jeffrey Dahmer was, because this was a cold-blooded, calculated killer. Well, joining the conversation is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. I'm talking about famed former FBI criminal profiler, Candace DeLong. Now, she is also host of an amazing podcast, Killer Psyche. Also joining us virtually from Syracuse University is renowned media scholar and professor of television and pop culture, Robert Thompson. Bob, when you look at this and other series, Manhunter and things where they really dig into killers, serial killers, what do you think the impact of that is on the general population that consumes that through their television?
Well, I think, and it's so hard to talk about this after hearing the stories of people who survived actual encounters. But I think we have to make a distinction between the people these stories are about and regular people's interest in those stories. I don't think it means that we are sick as a population to be fascinated by stories like these. We go through life with an idea of what's ideal, the way the world should be. And when we encounter the real heart of darkness, something that completely goes against anything that we think is right in humanity, in the world, it is fascinating. And I think there's a difference between the people who make these, the people who watch them, and the people for whom they're about, that we have to be careful we keep that distinction clear.
Well, you bring up such wise counsel in that regard. Clearly, for somebody that it's about, or even someone that's been through a similar situation, even if it's not about that particular killer, there's no doubt that it can trigger things for them. So it clearly has a different impact on gentlemen like you and Rita, whose brother was taken, and the 20 families that were involved, than it does for the rest of us. Now, the question is, has our culture's obsession with true crime desensitized us? Take a look at this sample from social media.
Have you watched the new Jeffrey Dahmer series yet? No, I don't really have any interest in watching that. Really? I'm like obsessed with true crime, so I watched it immediately as soon as it came out. I took the day off of work just so I could binge it all. I didn't even get up to eat or use the bathroom. I ordered diapers just so I could sit there in bed all day.
Women make up the vast majority of true crime fans. We are obsessed with it.
Her arms were cut off. Her legs were cut off. Her ears were cut off. Her tongue was cut off. Her nose was cut off.
Jeffrey Dahmer is hot. Apparently, there's a whole community of people on the internet that seem to think Jeffrey Dahmer is very, very attractive.
How likely is it that this guy can kill me? Male, about 5'9", probably says he's 5'10". Creepy mustache, I'm gonna say chances are very likely.
So I was gonna go on a nice walk in the forest. Then I remember what I learned from all the true crime I've been watching, and statistically speaking, I probably might not make it out of here alive.
I never worry about my husband killing me and getting away with it. I've seen how he cleans.
So I realized I must watch too much true crime, because when I got my coffee, it was like 8:24, and I was like, for my alibi. What alibi?
Do you guys in the audience, do you learn something from watching some of these shows? Okay, right over here.
I'm a huge fan of true crime and Candace's shows as well. I watched 2 or 3 episodes of the Dahmer, and I could not watch it anymore. Mm-hmm. I've seen all of the other true crime series, and for some reason, this one really affected me, and I could not watch the entire series. I felt for the victims. It was just so disturbing. I could not watch. Coming up, more of the reality of who Jeffrey Dahmer was and what turned him into the monster that fits so perfectly into a dramatic horror TV show that America is watching. If your kid is going around collecting dead animals, cutting them open and exploring them and that sort of thing, how do you not know that?
He was extremely secretive and devious.
Almost 20 years before Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story premiered on Netflix, I sat down with Jeffrey Dahmer's father and stepmother. I think watching this, you have to admit, you can see how his life writes like a Hollywood horror movie.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Phil. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Phil.
Good to meet you, sir.
How would you describe Jeffrey as a youngster when you were growing up?
Excuse me, Doctor, if you don't mind. We don't know. We don't relate to Jeffrey.
Okay, Jeff.
He's Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me ask you some things that, and I think these are right and accurate from your book. I understand that hindsight is 20/20, so I'm sure that these things will look different now. But Jeff was fascinated with a rotting animal carcass under the house and played with the bones and referred to them as fiddlesticks.
It was a terrible smell, so I went underneath and cleaned it out, the smell of the skunk, and cleaned out whatever else was under, cans and bones, and collected them all. And Jeff did seem to exhibit an interest in the way they clanked as he picked them up and put them back into a metal pail. He just laughed at it, the sound of it, and that was it.
It was said that he had even impaled a dog's head on a stick. And this, again, is something you only learned about in trial.
The trial. I asked him about that, and he said that it was back in the woods, 2 neighbors away from us. I saw a picture of it.
So he admitted that that was true.
He said he found this dog. I don't know if it's really true, to be honest with you, but he told me that he found this dog that he decapitated and put on a stake.
And do you believe that there were warning signs that as a father you should have seen? If your kid is going around collecting dead animals, cutting them open and exploring them and that sort of thing, how do you not know that?
Well, as I said, it's heavily wooded, very rough terrain, and there are a lot of hiding places. He was extremely secretive and devious.
Candace, what's your reaction to how they're describing him and his early behavior?
Considering what eventually happened and what they became aware of that he did as an adult, then looking back, certainly if it were me, my gosh, why didn't I do something? That is not normal for an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy to be fascinated with dead animals, body parts, laughing when they dropped at the sound of a bone clanking when it's dropped. I know you know this, Phil, the 3 big red flags: fire setting for the purpose of enjoying the fire, not just playing with matches, bedwetting, and I don't mean an occasional accident. I mean, sometimes we know that troubled teens may have what's called enuresis, the clinical term, bedwetting, several times in a night. And then the third, and the most severe, is animal torture. So fire setting, bedwetting, animal getting, what we say in the profiling world. And if any of those things are going on, don't encourage it and get the child into therapy.
How do you guys react knowing that you were dealing with somebody that is this demented and that this was percolating years before, Billy, for example, he's raping and torturing and terrorizing you several times a week, that this is something deeply ingrained in a very strange individual?
Exactly. I wanted to stop him so badly that after I got home, he showed up at my house, but I ran from him. No, I think that was in 81, around Thanksgiving. And, you know, I ran from him again. And then I had something in my head. So I called his father and asked if he was there. I was going to take my mother's car and drive up there and take care of the problem in Ohio. That's what I was going to do. I didn't do it, but that's how I had planned it in my head. And, you know, Jeff was a Jekyll Hyde kind of guy. When he attacked, he never said a word. You know, it was unexpected. It was so fast, within a millisecond, you know. And it just, you know, it just needed to, I felt after what he did to me personally, that I was going to collect that debt. I wanted him dead. After he got killed, I wanted to make sure that I knew that body was dead. You know, it's, you don't let your kid play with dead animals. Not your adolescent kids or not your little kids. You know, that was a mistake on the father.
So, Dr. Phil, my take on it is Mr. Dahmer has his culpability in it, because not saying that uneducated people are any less inclined, but he's a physicist. Mm-hmm. He's educated. And so to piggyback off what Billy said, you don't encourage your child to you know, dissect. I mean, it's different if you're in school and it's a group thing and you're doing a frog. We're talking about dogs. We're talking about roadkill. You know, I told you, I've actually called Lionel Dahmer after I realized what happened to me shortly thereafter. And I said, I'd like to talk to you, because I wanted to try to get a perspective of, you know, what went on with Jeff. How could you not know what took place with him? And he blew me off. Well, I don't think we need to talk. And he hung up on me.
He may have been educated, but he was incredibly naive.
Tell me about the locked wooden box.
I saw this box in the closet. He convinced me to just wait till tomorrow, Dad, he said. If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it.
Jeffrey's father also talked about a horrifying discovery he almost made when he found a suspicious-looking wooden box belonging to his son, and he asked to look inside.
Tell me about the locked wooden box that you confronted him about.
On several occasions, my mother had complained about seeing some pornography around. So when I made the visit to Milwaukee, I saw this box in the closet in his room. I said, I'm going to open it. And I started going down to the basement to get a tool to open up the box. And he kept complaining that he couldn't even have 1 foot square of his own property to do with what he wants. And I said, I'm going to open it anyway, find out what's in here. Because that's what I thought it was, something related to pornography. And in fact, he convinced me to just wait till tomorrow, Dad, he said. And I'll open it for you then, but just don't do anything now. I don't want to disturb Grandma, because she was in a nearby room and she heard all this commotion that I was going through with Jeff. And so I'm in a way I'm glad, but in a way I'm not glad that I didn't press it, because if I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it. Then the next day he opened it and he said, see, this is what it was. And in fact, he had stuffed some pornographic magazines in there.
But we now know the box contained a human head.
Yes.
And
it would have stopped. And I said, well, what would you have done, Jeff, if I'd opened it? And he said something like, the jig would have been up. Just something non-emotional, non-committal. I could have, more lives would have been saved.
So, Bob, this is straight from a horror genre script, right?
Yes, this is very much a horror movie kind of thing. The big difference is in horror movies, whether it's Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger or whoever, they kill fictional people, and those fictional people have fictional relatives. Here we've got a story which has affected all kinds of people who are still alive and who are still able to see this. I would say one quick thing we haven't mentioned yet, that as much as, and glamorizing almost always happens, especially with a 10-part show, but this film actually does make at least some concerted efforts to talk about some things that I think the other Dahmer movies and others haven't. And that is this idea of how did he keep getting away with this? Why were the police responses to people who kept calling as bad as they were? When the Reverend Jackson, or the actor that plays Reverend Jackson, comes in the last half of this series, we do begin to get those arguments of policing issues, of underserved communities. And by the time this whole thing is over, I think some consciousness has been raised about how something like this was allowed to happen 17 times over.
Yeah. And Candace, the naivete of this father of saying, okay, I want to know what's in that box, but I'll give you 24 hours so you can empty it, clean it out, stage it, put something in it you want me to see.
He didn't want to know what was in it.
How many people would stay alive today?
And he even admits that.
It's the culpability, Dr. Phil, that I spoke about.
How did Jeffrey become what he was? His father has a theory about that. We'll hear what that is when we come back.
I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Closed captioning provided by Jeffrey Dahmer's father revealed they may have missed twisted signs of evil in their son as early as 5 years old.
How old was he when his mother left and took his brother?
Just turned 18.
What effect do you think it had when she left and took his brother but not him?
Sherry and I came upon our house, and Jeff was there all alone. And Jeff looked like an abandoned animal. How would you describe it?
Well, he was forlorn.
Yeah.
He stated later that he felt totally, it's the first time he felt so lonely. That's when he went out looking for someone to stay with him. He was so lonely.
That was the
he
first
felt
murder.
Abandoned
We didn't know he was left alone. And he had already done this first murder. He apparently felt so alone that he picked up this hitchhiker. And when this hitchhiker wanted to leave, he wanted him to stay so badly, he hit him with a barbell. And I kind of think that it was more of an accident than an intentional, thought-out killing.
I'm bothered by the mindset here. If you break down the structure of some of those sentences, that's when he felt so alone that he didn't want this person to leave. So it then follows that he kills him so he'll stay. It's like, this is what people do, right? I don't want you to leave, so I'll kill you so you can't. No, that's not how you reason your way through that. The fact that that's even part of your sentence structure, your thought process, those thoughts don't follow on. He was so alone, he didn't want him to leave, so he accidentally picked up a barbell and killed him. No, that doesn't follow on. And it's that kind of thinking that contributes to this kind of conduct?
I believe serial killers are created. You have to have the perfect storm to create it. I don't think you're necessarily born a serial killer.
He didn't make those choices for Jeffrey, and he didn't, I don't think if he was going to check a box about what he wanted his son to become, he would do that. But you have to be incredibly naive and then start framing stuff up in a real dysfunctional way to think and talk about the way they're talking about it. So how did Jeffrey become what he was?
We all do bad things. We all sin.
Did you say, Jeff, how in the world could you make this okay in your mind?
Closed captioning provided by How did Jeffrey become what he was? You don't just go from being a normal child to doing what he did. His father has a theory. Let's hear it, and then I want to hear from Candace.
Now, tell me, when you tried to deconstruct this in your mind and say, how in the world could this child that I laughed with, that I wrestled with, that used to run and jump on his grandmother and joy and excitement, how could he wind up to be this murderer, this serial killer?
I thought that he, at some point in his age 12 to 14, when he was coming out of puberty, his sexual engine, so to speak, was in high drive, and he was touching the insides of these animals. That he just sort of got hardwired neuronally into connecting the sexual pleasure with this type of activity, entrails, insides of bodies. That's the way I thought about it after thinking about it for a while. At first, I couldn't fathom how he turned out to be this far down the continuum. I mean, we're all on a continuum. We all do bad things. We all sin. He was at the extreme of this continuum. I couldn't at first understand how he could have done those things.
Did you ask him? Did you say, Jeff, how in the world could you make this okay in your mind?
I was concentrating mostly on getting him into a psychiatric hospital. I didn't ask him that specifically, but I did tell him, Jeff, we've got to find out how on earth you could have done these things.
Well, Candace, unpack that.
You think serial killers are created. And what we do know, there is a clinical disorder, antisocial personality disorder. And it pretty much speaks for, antisocial, and it's a personality disorder. I call it a chink in the DNA armor. It's there. For example, if you're blonde, you're blonde. You can color your hair dark, but your DNA says you're a blonde. Antisocial personality disorder can be broken down into two categories, psychopath, sociopath. The simple way to look at it is psychopaths are born. Sociopaths are made. Now, having studied hundreds of people that commit horrible crimes, serial killers or mass murderers, things like that, and going back into their childhood, a lot of them that would be and have been diagnosed as sociopaths, so that side of the umbrella, had horrible, gruesome experiences as children. And then on the other side of that is what appears to be Jeffrey Dahmer, despite the fact that his parents argued a great deal and his mother had her problems, did not suffer beatings from his parents, did not suffer, wasn't locked away in dark closets, wasn't starved. We know these things that I just described do happen to some children. Many of them survive it without becoming killers themselves, but some of them don't. I haven't been able to put my finger on anything in Jeffrey Dahmer's childhood, his upraising, that would lead me to say, that's why he became a serial killer. I think there was, my expression, a chink in the DNA armor. As they grow older, get more experience, they learn to be cunning, they learn to be clever. Jeffrey was manipulative. That was the hardest part of the series for me to watch, and I couldn't watch the last few episodes. Seeing how he manipulated the police into, oh no, this young boy, he's my boyfriend. He was naked and he was bleeding. And the police went, okay. And the woman that lived next door, the police would not listen to her. That made me sick. But it's important to know, people that can become serial killers start learning how to lie and manipulate when they are very young, 5, 6 years old. And watching these videos of Lionel, Jeff could do no wrong.
Clearly, this is a phenomenon. True crime is a fascination of people. Is this all bad, or is there an upside to it?
I do not think it's all bad.
Clearly, this is a phenomenon. True crime is a fascination of people. Is this all bad, or is there an upside to it?
I do not think it's all bad. There is an upside. And the upside, I believe, is there's something for potential victims to learn, listening to these stories, watching these stories. Let's put the glorification over here. What can be learned? And when I was a very young psychiatric nurse in my 20s, and I worked in maximum security at Northwestern University Hospital. And I found myself one day sitting across the table from a young man, a teenager, who had been admitted to our unit for 30 days of observation and treatment. He had murdered his mother. I wanted to know what in the world could have been going on in his life with his mother, the one person in the world to whom he was dependent on finances, love, housing, everything, and he murdered her. What went on there? What was wrong in that relationship? And I thought, the more I knew about him and how that happened, then I would be able to handle things like that in my future. Not that I'm concerned about killing my mother, of course, but there were other patients through the years that were on the unit because they did something horrible to another person. And I thought, the more I knew about them, why they act that way, why they did it, how they did it, how did they get away with it, I thought I would be personally safe for myself if I ever encountered anyone like that.
Both of you have said that Dahmer presented with one persona, and then when he got in a different situation, privately shifted to another. And one of the things I've talked about before is, we're raised to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I've always said that's insane to me that you give people the benefit of the doubt. You collect data, and when you have enough to make an informed decision, you make the informed decision. And what you're saying is this alerts people to the fact that there's a makeup for these kind of people, and you learn by watching what they do, how they do it, how they manipulate, how they control, all of those sort of things. And if you can look through all the television magic and look at the patterns, there is some instruction there that people can learn from. Do you learn something from watching some of these shows? Okay, right here, front row.
Hello, my name is Trevor Roll. I watched the movie or TV show on Netflix with my husband, who couldn't sit through the first episode. But unluckily, I felt bad now because I forced him to watch it with me. But what really got me was the ending, just having that sympathy, because I am religious, and the glorification of seeing somebody that did so many crimes and just witnessing or just glorifying the fact that he got baptized kind of really moved me, in the sense of this conflict of trying to have sympathy for somebody that does something so evil and have victims and families that's suffering from it. And that really put me in a spiral and made me rethink about the things that I want to watch, the things that try to manipulate my sympathy for these evildoers in life.
Well, coming up, Lionel says he forgives his son and wants victims too as well. I'll get Billy and Preston's response to that next and talk about something that kind of underlies what I think's going on with Jeffrey Dahmer. And we're starting to push the envelope of evil. I'll be right back. Closed captioning provided by I want to thank all of my guests, Professor Bob Thompson, former FBI profiler and host of the podcast Killer Psyche, Candace DeLong, for their insights, Rita for being a voice for her brother Errol, and again, Billy and Preston for sharing their stories. Tomorrow, home movies of Jeffrey as a child that I promise you don't want to miss. They're haunting. Tomorrow on Dr. Phil.
This shows Jeff at a very, very early age. He had such a sweet disposition.
Do you think there were warning signs?
There definitely were warning signs that I missed, but I didn't believe it. That's the bicycle that we learned that he had used to travel around the rural roads to pick up roadkill. He kept these animals and felt them, their insides, their entrails, terrible things like that. This strange association between roadkill and his sexual urges.
How could he wind up to be this serial killer?
That's tomorrow. That's all tomorrow. You don't want to miss it.